Ladies and gentlemen, you do not know how amazing it is that we have Mark Halperin with Two-Way, the legendary political reporter, joining us here on the New Hampshire Journal podcast, and the fact that he is not right now in legal custody. So I'm amazed by that, Halperin. So thanks so much.
It's all amazing. I'll do anything for anybody in New Hampshire, including you.
I'm the bottom of the barrel, and there you finally hit it. So look, we'll have a few minutes. I want to roll through because it's so important to New Hampshire politics, home of the first in the nation primary, 2028. Every month you've got your new 8 for 28 list. And for the people who are listening and not watching, let's roll through real quickly. Number 8, John Ossoff. Number 7, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Number 6, Rahm Emanuel, who will be here in a few weeks. Number 5, Bernie Sanders, who's won New Hampshire twice before. Number 4, Pete Buttigieg, who pretty much almost won it last time. Number 3, Josh Shapiro. Number 2, Kamala Harris. And the number 1 spot, Gavin Newsom. Now, there's a glaring problem with your list we'll get to in a second. But first, why Gavin Newsom, number 1? A guy that, because I watch Two-Way morning meeting religiously every morning, that is on my knees weeping and in prayer. You told me for months, Gavin's not even running. Now you got the California governor at the top of the list. Yeah,
for people who aren't familiar with my rankings, it's just about winning the nomination. It's not about winning the general. And I do factor in whether my reporting and spidey sense suggests somebody's going to run or not. I don't think Newsom is going to run in the end. I think he might run and then get out. But that's not a sure thing. And whenever I say that, people around him, very close to him, contact me and say, "Mark, you look like an idiot. Of course he's going to run." So right now, he's really one of the only aircraft carriers in the race. He's one of the only folks who can raise the money, perform on media, do well in the early states, handle himself with voters. So it's a very weak field. But he's got more assets than anybody else from my reporting.
So number 2 is Kamala Harris, and there was some interest. I'm trying to remember who was doing it on Twitter today, but someone was basically having the conversation. If she runs a second time and loses, her not only is her political career over, but she goes down in history as a loser with a big capital L. Is that a reasonable analysis to you, or is that not how electeds think, or is that just nonsense?
Well, I think if she didn't win the nomination as the former vice president and presidential nominee, I think it would be difficult to come back. I never say never. And
sure.
Look, 2020, her campaign started strong, but very weak. Didn't make to the starting line. And I have sources as I do my rankings, and I talk to lots of people in the party, including New Hampshire folks. I have sources who think she should be number 1, and I have sources who don't think she shouldn't be on the list. Let's just talk about her strengths, because every candidate has weaknesses. Typically, when people want to challenge the list, they'll say, how can you rank this person? Here's all the things wrong with them. Well, as Bill Clinton famously said in New Hampshire, if you want a perfect candidate, vote for somebody else. I think that she's got more female Black support than anyone else. She's got experience. She can raise a ton of money. She's got a great email list. And she's proven on the book tour that she can build enthusiasm among some number of people. To be the nominee, you don't need to win 50%, right? You just need to win more than anybody else in terms of votes and delegates. So I've moved her up until she either says she's not running or she demonstrates that she hasn't improved as a candidate. She's got too many strengths to me to keep her lower.
So as a fellow political junkie who has watched her campaign for years, we don't talk about this part of it, but the fact is, it's like being a sports fan. You can't follow the players this closely and not have some feeling for them. If she came to you and said, you know who I am, you know my strengths and weaknesses, and you know where the world is right now, should I try to run for president?
No,
what would you say to Kamala?
Not if her goal is to win. I don't think she can be the nominee, and I don't think she can win a general election. So I don't think so, but I want to see if she's improved.
Okay.
Her book tour has shown that she understands some of the things she was doing poorly before.
Right.
So she's improved. I don't know if she's improved enough.
And it's fascinating when Gavin Newsom was in New Hampshire and did a book event. It wasn't even part of the campaign. He never mentioned the words New or Hampshire in his entire event at Portsmouth. He just sold the books, did his on-the-road speech, and left. It was bizarre. Almost as bizarre as number 3, Josh Shapiro, number 5, Sanders account, and number 6, Rahm Emanuel. Mark Halperin, one of the smartest people I know in politics, you're telling me that the Democratic Party of 2028 is going to gather its from the river to the sea, intifada, globalized crowd and nominate a Jewish person to be president of the United States. My lovely bride, who is in the tribe, thinks you're crazy.
Well, you missed one. Ossoff is Jewish too.
And up until recently,
I had Governor Pritzker on there. So it's entirely possible that I could have had 5 of the 8 Jews. And by the way, not tall Jews.
That's true.
Short Jews.
Yes,
Look,
exactly.
there are people who say can't be a Jew, can't be a woman, can't be a person
Right.
of color, can't be a gay person. If that's the case, we're down to Beshear versus Newsom. Because everybody else is in one of those
I got to
categories.
stop right there because you're conflating two different things. People are saying inside the Democratic Party, oh, America's so full of these knuckle dragging, mouth breathing white bigots. They won't vote for a black president, like Barack Obama. They won't vote for a woman like, Hillary Clinton, who won the popular vote. The flip side of that is the observers, people watching the game, watching the Democratic Party's open antipathy towards Israel and a lot of splash over into Jews and saying, I'm telling you, there's no way that party nominates a Jewish person. It's not that America won't vote for him, it's that party won't nominate them.
I agree with what you said, although I think that I reframe the first one a little bit and just to say they just think after losing to Donald Trump in 16 and 24, they don't want to take a risk. On paper, it's risky to nominate anything but a white male Christian. And that's a view of a lot of women of color in the party. It's not all of them, but a view of some. Sure. On the second point,
is that your view? I'm just curious. Well, look, being honest about America.
My view is the candidate matters most, and if it's a candidate like Barack Obama, it doesn't matter. But my view is if you want to play the odds, a white male Christian is your best chance to win a general election. I think statistically, most of our presidents have been white male Christians. So you may want to stick with the formula that's won before. On the question of a Jew, Bill Clinton in 1992 won the Democratic primary, pro death penalty, pro right to work, pro welfare reform, pro free trade. These positions were anathema to the base of the party. And I would argue they were more fundamental to the views of the party overall, not just the extreme progressive wing, than the positions on Israel that are so dividing the party right now. So I think the right candidate, and not all Jews are smart, but all 4 Jews on my list are smart. The right Jew can explain to the party what their position on Israel is. And I believe that would not be dispositive. Is it more likely that the Jew than a Christian? No. But the right Jew in a weak field, I believe, can win. And I'll say this about all 4 of them. All 4 of them. Their biggest problem, their biggest barrier to being the nominee is not that they're Jewish. They have other bigger problems.
Well, what's Josh Shapiro's bigger problem?
He has not handled adversity well. When there have been political controversies in the context of his being vetted by Kamala Harris, just this past week, a story in Axios about it's a complicated thing, but an audio tape of an ally making a claim about him. I'm amazed a guy that smart and that agile who does not have a strong team around him. That's I think part of the problem. It just hasn't understood that the most important thing in American presidential politics, and I've written about this in one of my books, you must control your public image. You must be the guardian of your public image. You need the media and the public and your rivals and your opponents to think of you the way you'd like to be thought of. And when adversity comes up, he simply doesn't do it.
From my work inside sources, we used to cover Pennsylvania closely for several years. And he had a lingering problem with this staffer that had been in a mini scandal. And that's still around because Shapiro's so thin-skinned about it. He's so unable to just, look, I got to take this problem out and beat it until it falls into a coma.
100%.
He wants to dodge, evade. It's not 100%, me. So I think it's a good point.
And it is arguably the single biggest Achilles heel for a presidential candidate, because rest assured, if you have any success, there will be controversies. And if you handle them the way he's handled them, not the way Bill Clinton would handle them, or Barack Obama or Donald Trump, you're asking to be knocked out of the race.
Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. I mean, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump just show again the whole point. If you can take the punches, you can have success, even if there are a million punches. But you have to take the punches. You can't dodge them or put them on someone else. Just take the punches. Okay,
100%.
I want to dispose of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is not going to be president for 1,000 reasons. He's just not going to be president. Why is he on the list?
The list doesn't say president. It says nominee.
He's not going to be the nominee. He's not going to be anything.
Okay, Michael, if the New Hampshire primary were today, who and all 8 of the people on my list entered, who would win it?
Either Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll never convince you then. Bernie would win the primary today.
No, he would not. He would not win the
He
primary.
would.
Bernie's
He
moment
would.
is look. So on the ground, talking to progressives who are very frustrated that they don't have. They want a Graham Platner in New
Yeah.
Hampshire. They want an AOC in New Hampshire. They got nothing. They got all these vanilla candidates. Nothing
Yeah.
against Senator Jean Shaheen, nice lady, but she's definitely on the
Mhm.
vanilla aisle. That party is not here. That's the Bernie Sanders party is not
Yeah.
here. So it's just
They'd
no.
vote
It
for
would not be
Bernie.
Bernie Sanders. He's
It
done.
would.
No. Now Rahm Emanuel is interesting. He's coming up to do a bike thing and he's bringing his combative spirit. What's Rahm Emanuel's? Why is this guy who basically wears a T-shirt that says "I'm a jerk"? Yes, ask me how. How is it he's still so appealing? I don't. It's so fascinating
Well,
to watch.
he's appealing to insiders, and he's appealing because he may have a super PAC with $500 million, and he's appealing because he knows the tactics of politics.
Right.
When he was working in the White House for Bill Clinton, they'd say, "Oh, let's come up with some good ideas. All right, here's an idea. Let's have school uniforms, mandatory
Right.
school uniforms. Okay, let's have a press announcement that the president's forming a commission to have a study of school uniforms. And then a
Right.
few weeks later, let's have an event with the 10 members of the commission and to talk about school uniforms. And then a few weeks later, let's have an update on the commission and how they're working. Then a few weeks later, let's announce the commission findings. And then a few weeks later, let's announce the president's implementation of the findings. That's what Rahm did for Bill Clinton. It's what he did for Barack Obama. And he's killing people, not just with PR, but he is dominating the so-called policy primary. He's announcing serious things that are understandable to voters, and the other people are just letting him dominate that. Now, eventually, they'll all start stealing his ideas, and he'll have to figure out what to do about that. But for now, he's doing it. I think his record as Chicago mayor will preclude him from being the nominee in all likelihood.
What I was more asking about why do voters there's a like he was at an event in New Hampshire and these people clearly did not agree with him on a lot of stuff, but they just liked him. And I'm like, he's not even trying to be liked. And I think every social group, Mark Halperin, has kind of like the designated as we pay in it, the jerk that you rely on. I know my friends had one. And I think that he's kind of like that jerk that you still like, you know, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I don't think he's I don't think
No, you don't
he's
think he's likable?
I'm not.
totally
I'm
wrong.
not. I'm not. Well, I'm not sure the voters you were in the room with
Right.
are representative of how voters will respond.
Okay, that's good. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. We're running out of time, so I got to get to John Ossoff just because I don't understand. I mean, is he gonna run? Is there rumors he's gonna run?
He was asked about it the other.
Georgia?
He was asked about it the other day, and he said he wasn't interested. But I believe that if some of the people who people expect to run don't run, and I think that could happen. And I believe if he wins the re-election to his seat by 4 more points in Georgia, I think there'll be a lot of pressure on him to run because he answers a lot of biographically the things that people in the party want. He's young, he's energetic, he's visionary. He brings together the center of the party and the left of the party. And he's anti-Trump, but he also believes in a positive vision. And he's a serious guy and a great political strategist. So I just think I put him on the list because I believe that he will come under a lot of pressure to run if he wins, and I think he'd be a very attractive candidate. The people who know him best think he'd be an extraordinary candidate, and I value their opinions.
Wow. That's good. Last thing, where is New Hampshire in the world of national politics? When you and your elites, what's this place on Sunday you guys go and have your
L'Oreal Plaza.
Yes, for your brunch, whatever. What are they saying about New Hampshire, the First Nation primary, its role in the presidential stuff, and anything else? Please tell me they're not saying that there's going to be a Republican U.S. senator or member of Congress, because that's not happening. New Hampshire's done.
You and I disagree about that. It's strange because, as you know, so many of the reporters and editors these days don't know what the Wayfarer bar is. Couldn't drive from Keene to Manchester if their life depended on it. Have never been to a pumpkin festival, right? The resonance of what the primary means is lost on a lot of the people who control the discussion about the calendar. And most of them have never covered a New Hampshire primary that was, competitive and everything.
Sure.
So there's, to me, shockingly little interest in the calendar and what the order is going to be and what the implications of that are. That's maybe on the downside. On the upside is I don't think anybody's going to object to your non-urban lily white state going first. And I wouldn't be surprised if you were first.
I think that's how it's gonna work out. I also think that maybe our best friend right now for the First Nation primary is Rahm Emanuel, because his event is going to get some attention. And Granite Staters are going to show up to hear him talk, because this is part of the culture. It's like football Friday nights, it draws people. It's a thing you do. You tell hey, honey, let's get in the car. Let's go see some guys running for president. And you go down and check it out. So that'll be good. Yeah,
I agree. And I think anybody who goes now who understands how to manipulate WMUR and the papers can get a lot of coverage. Like if you plan the trip right and you make yourself available, you can get a lot of coverage. And Rahm got an incredible story in the Union Leader just announcing the bike trip.
Right. Exactly.
And I bet you his campaign hires a van and lets the photogs shoot off the back of it.
Sure.
They'll do that. It's not expensive and it's not that tricky. And that'll be a good trip.
I think it's going to be great. But the one media outlet they can't push around, NHJournal. Only Mark Halperin can do that. You force us to our laptop every morning, 9 o'clock. We cannot start our day without the morning meeting at Two-Way. And if you're out there watching or listening, not a subscriber, you've got to check out Two-Way with Mark Halperin right away. Thanks so much for your time, man. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate it.
Honored to be on with you.
We are so lucky to have two of the smartest people in New Hampshire politics on this podcast, Dave Carney and me. And also, no, I'm kidding. No, we do have veteran Dave Carney, but Greg Moore, even though when you talk to him, he seems like kind of clueless, right, Dave? I mean, he's really kind of smart, Greg Moore. So thank you, Greg. We appreciate it. You hide it well, sir.
He's the smartest guy in New Hampshire politics. I agree.
What do you have to say to that, Greg Moore?
Michael, I reject the notion that you're a smart guy, so we'll just stop there.
Well, low bar, people. I thrive off the low bar and the low expectations. It's like my dating life. The low expectations are what come through for me. So, look, I got a ton of stuff to talk about. I just chatted with Mark Halperin, pretty smart guy. Every month he releases his latest 8 for 2028. You're looking forward to who are the likely nominees going to be. And top of his list is Gavin Newsom for the Democrats. Number 2 is Kamala Harris. So I'm going to ask about that in just a few minutes. But first, just your big picture right now, Dave Carney. What is 2026 looking like across the U.S. and here in New Hampshire?
Well, I think, so much of it is going to be dependent on the price of gas, as a sort of a place filler for the economy. And, if the president's successful in Iran and in that situation and prices go down, things will be in better shape. If not, obviously it'll be bad. Unfortunately, on the federal level, most campaigns are lazy and they sort of want to run on the national issues instead of running on what the issues matter in the state they're campaigning in or the district they're campaigning in. So because they're lazy, they end up being totally at the whim of the national, wave. If they run real campaigns and they talk about things and people in South Carolina care about, they can buttress themselves from those headwinds. But midterms are always bad for the party in power. But I'm not panicking. Many of my cohorts around the country are in a meltdown because they're basically lazy, in my opinion.
Greg Moore?
No, I think that looking at sort of the where we are right now nationally is in a time where there's a lot of opportunity for movement for both parties. Obviously, President Trump, middle of a non-war war, and gas prices are spiking. At the same time, voters really are not gravitating to any of the messaging the Democrats are putting forward. That is the dead cat bounce right there. And so the hope is on both sides is that people will vote against the other party. And right now, neither side are making a much of a great case for their own agenda. That's fine. I will say that we've seen this in midterms over and over again, which is the party in power tends to be the party that doesn't do so hot. But if you look at the financial disparity between the Republicans and the Democrats right now, it is enormous. Republicans have a lot more money. And right now they have the wind at their back with the opportunity to redraw dozens of House districts in the South, and that's something you're familiar with, I'm sure, Michael,
Yes.
of a lot of what's happened in the past. But
Well,
this Supreme Court decision has changed the math and the map across the country, and where that goes, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out. But national trends do matter, as Dave said. The president has to figure out a way to get gas prices down below $3 again. And I think if he does that, he stands to put himself in a much better position for the Republican Party coming in. And one other thing, as I mention all the time, it's really is where you pick your spots. And as at a national level, Republicans are going to be picking their spots, and I suspect that when push comes to shove, it's going to be in the U.S. for the U.S. Senate, and for a state like New Hampshire, as we're getting down to New Hampshire. With the expectation of something $250 million or more being spent in a U.S. Senate campaign here, I think that's definitely a case where that has an opportunity to upset the calculus of breaking a national trend.
What is it? Go ahead. Okay, Dave Carney. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I agree with Greg. I mean, the national is going to somewhat to be dependent on how many. I mean, Tennessee did their redistricting, eliminated one Democrat yesterday. That's all they had. I mean, I think Louisiana and some of these other states, Florida, could have a tremendous impact on holding the House. But I agree. I think New Hampshire has a real opportunity with Sununu Pappas race, and I think Greg's a little bit underestimating how much will be spent. The Hassan AOT race was $230 million spent on both sides. I think we'll be close to $400 million before it's over because of Boston. It's going to be
$400 million spent on a chance to elect a Republican to the U.S. Senate in New Hampshire. That's your prediction.
Or hold the Democrat seat. It'll be both sides, combined. That's a combined number.
I'm going to go on the record and say that you're both way off. It's going to be significantly less, but that's why we have you guys on. That's how it looks.
In 12 we spent $230 million. What what I mean, the cost of political inflation is clearly, if we just spent that amount of money, it would be close to 400
in 2012, you had just elected a Republican to the U.S. Senate 2 years earlier. So anyway, and Donald Trump wasn't in the White House. So those are the conditions. Let me ask something. What does it say about the current climate for voters when someone like a Graham Platner, who separate, everyone's got issues, but in the past, I think Nazi tattoo would have been like a thing. And in Michigan, one of the people who's likely to be the nominee for U.S. Senate, El Said is the gentleman's name, openly pro-Hamas. I mean, these are things that were not on the table. Is it because the guardrails are largely gone and that voters are just more open in this world of social media? We see crazy stuff all the time. Or is it the case that there's so much anger towards Trump that people are willing to set aside everything other than, I just don't like Trump? What do you think's going on, Greg Moore?
Well, there's no question that Donald Trump has caused a reactionary impact within the Democratic Party. The impact that he's having is elevating progressives as almost like the pendulum swinging to the other end, where people like Janet Mills, whether you agree or disagree, but she was a two-term governor who has a record of accomplishment. I'd say not so great accomplishment, but a record of accomplishment in 8 years. And she can't even get a sniff. She can't even get a sniff against a Graham Platner. And then you look at, as you point out, in places like Michigan, and then you look at some of these primaries that are taking place and at the U.S. House level, where the Democrats are going. Progressives have the wind at their back. The problem is, and we'll see this played out over the next few months and years, is progressives are really bad at running things. We're going to see this in New York City. We're already seeing this in New York City.
Hey,
progressives are really.
I've got my shopping trip. I've got my shopping trip at the government grocery store already planned, because if you can't trust the same people who do such a fine job of delivering the mail to handle your groceries, you're just getting it all wrong.
So the challenge put forth is when you show that you can't govern, at some point there's going to be just there people in the middle who are going to be looking at the two polls of Trump and Mondami and just be like, what are we doing here? And I think that those folks are going to be up for grabs. And as David said, they're going to be people like John Sununu who can step in and fill in that space and say, look, I'm just here to actually be thoughtful and get things done in a principled way, but still principled, but in a way that actually works and embraces New Hampshire values. And that message is going to resonate. I really think it's going to resonate in October and November.
So, Dave Carney, are you on the thoughtful voter bandwagon? That sounds like a winning strategy.
Well, a couple things. The Democratic Party, I think, was down last week to 10% approval rating. Okay. And there is, in their primary voters, there are these, somebody shows up to these protests. These people, this base is highly activated. The great thing about that for our side is you can only push the button once. Doesn't matter how hard you slam it or how bold you make your X, is one vote. And, the voters, if Nevada had or used to have this none of the above they could vote for, if that was nationwide, none of the above would be very, very popular because pox on both houses.
Good point.
But I think the Trump derangement syndrome, which, has been a term used for a couple of years now, I think it's real. They're blinded by this, hatred of Trump, which they cannot even articulate what it is. And it started the night that he beat Hillary Clinton, and we all remember watching that election night party fizzle and the crying and the screaming. I actually watch every once in a while just to make me feel better. It is just hilarious. And there's an 18-minute on YouTube segment of all the MSNBC and all the commentators on election night talking about, how it's, Trump's going to lose, Hillary's going to win. Oh, well, North Carolina. Oh, that was, it's just fun to watch. I think the problem is, today we had 115,000 new jobs in April and twice what the experts estimated. So, there are fundamental things happening that those people like us who are in politics and online and don't do anything for a living but watch Twitter, quite honestly, we're not what most people are. Most people are working, taking their kids to soccer camp or whatever they're doing. They're not engaged in politics. So we'll see what happens. Labor Day will be the start. If gas prices are under control, people feel better, the Republicans have a decent shot.
So I will just remind you that most people.
Michael, don't forget the fact that people like John Sununu can do a great job reminding folks that Chris Pappas voted for the largest tax increase in American history. So that's another piece, another element to that as we get closer to the cycle is that, hey, you had no solution when the Trump tax cuts were about to expire. You had no solution other than to grow government.
Right. And listen, and I think that may be the biggest core question that will tell us what's going to happen. If you can figure out the answer, are voters going to vote on actual policies like you mentioned, Chris Pappas's tax cut votes and, Maggie Goodlander's votes on, Iran and Israel, whatever? Or is it just going to be, I'm here to show you that I'm really mad and the Republicans are in charge and I'm really mad at Trump? One thing, for example, Dave Carney just said, well, people just running around, they're going to work, they're taking care of their kids. They're also telling pollsters by a 2.5 to 1 margin, I hate Donald Trump. Is that all just going to go away? Are people going to suddenly set that aside and go, what was your tax policy? I want to know about that.
The partisan aside, the partisans are going to vote. And, and when I was growing up, people used to wear T-shirts, red or blue. Now they tattoo their body, red or blue. And there's no changing them. Right. American, and in New Hampshire in particular, the middle decides. Independents, undeclared, unenrolled, whatever you call them in every state, is something a little different. Those 15%, they are in charge. Right. And they will make the decisions based on what's best for their personal economies, not the national economy, not the world economy. They're what decisions they're making this summer of what their kids are going to do. Are they going to go away on vacation or just take weekend camping trips? Are they just going to go to Hampton Beach for a Saturday or Sunday, or are they going to go away for a week,
Sure.
and tour Fort
Disney,
Ticonderoga and shit like that. It is that economy, the micro economy, that will determine how people feel. And politics, the noise will be extremely loud, in hysterical on both sides.
Right.
But I think ultimately it's the people who are in the middle that they're the kings. We say we have no kings. We had 50% kings.
So Greg Moore, Dave Carney said that if you're smart and you work hard and you focus on issues, you can beat the national trend. What are one or two issues that candidates here in New Hampshire should be focusing on because they'll actually move voters? Because right now, based on what I can see, the only thing people are focused on are posting stuff on Twitter and sending me emails asking for money. That's apparently the entire campaign at this point.
Well, clearly, Michael, you've written a check or two, because once you do that, you get put in the sales funnel, and then it's a never spiral.
Written a political check in my life ever.
I don't believe that, because once you get in there, then there's no getting out. It's kind of like the Roach Motel. No, what's really driving people, obviously, in New Hampshire is having some solutions for what's going on in the housing market. That's a huge issue right now,
Okay.
and it's a durable issue. It's tougher at the federal level because there's a lot fewer levers you have to pull.
Sure.
State has a lot more that they can do. So Governor Ayotte, it can become a bigger issue for her to campaign on.
Right.
Price of energy and availability of energy is a huge issue. And we're seeing it manifest itself with a policy across the board, everything from AI and data centers and things like that are becoming top level issues. And at the same time, I think that there's a lot of concern with the rise of AI, and we've seen some of this in some of the focus grouping of people about the future of what work and what that looks like. So, I mean, some of the smart people are starting to look over the horizon, because we're starting to hear about job cuts due to AI, and people are starting to develop a sense of unease about, hey, okay, I might have a job right now, but what's that going to look like 5 years now when AI comes and comes after me? And we're seeing a lot of those transitions in the workplace, and more people are starting to feel that. And I'm starting to hear about it more and more as I talk to activists and just regular people across the state. So,
but Greg Moore, are you hearing about it?
Issue,
but are you hearing about it from candidates? I'm not hearing about it from any of the federal candidates in New Hampshire. I'm not hearing about it anywhere.
No one's talking about it at the pundit level, but it is an issue that's happening around the dinner tables across New Hampshire right now.
So, Dave Carney, what's one of those issues that a candidate could go out and beat the national trend because they talk about it, own it, make the voters understand they're into it?
Well, talking about this, state New Hampshire candidates, not the federal, the New Hampshire candidates, the fact that the Democrats have yet to figure out, like how to deal with income tax. I mean, they were given a perfect opportunity to take that issue away, which is what John Lynch did, when he first got elected. He took the pledge. Therefore, any argument against him was gone. And and he's a nice guy, and he's a successful business guy, and he was able to win.
Right.
And the Democrats are just like we have been in the past, and we might even say they are captured of the smallest, loudest, most progressive part of their party.
Right.
And the things that they end up voting against are, what the vast majority of people in New Hampshire, it's an 80-20 issue. And they're voting with the 20% because I don't know why. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But I do think there are some issues like income tax and fiscal responsibility that work. And how do I know it works? Because it's worked for 40 years. It's I don't have to be a genius like Greg to know, but it can't be only that, right? People are concerned about their quality of life. They're concerned about what's best for their kids.
Sure.
And this AI thing, I really get angry when people say, you know what, we need to run government more like a business. Well, not a corporation, I'll tell you that, because AI industry has been on the wrong side and so late to the argument, to the public square, that they're getting pummeled. Like today, most data centers don't use water. They recirculate it.
Right.
Most of them bring their own power.
Right.
And so now it is a problem in New England because we were hostage to Cuomo and we don't have gas pipelines, which is being fixed. But, we have, regulators in New England who, have this fairy dust idea of how we're going to get energy, and therefore we don't produce real energy. And you drive around New Hampshire, you can see all these plants that were shut down, or 3 plants that were shut down that produced for years cheap, reliable, clean energy, but we don't want them because they sound bad. So we're paying the price. But there are issues. And are we going to win on the issues of Israel, or are we going to win on the issues of what's going on in Iran? Not until it's resolved,
Right. So I just want to point out that Chris Pappas voted for the biggest tax hike ever. Chris Pappas voted for the Green New Deal scam that Biden pushed through, and Chris Pappas will not lose a single vote on that issue in 2026 on his way to handily winning his election in the 1st congressional district. People are not going to vote on issues. But let's talk about what people really want to talk about, which is who's running for president. And so I want to ask you, Greg Moore, we're going to make you the king of the world, and you get to pick as an advocate, not an opponent, an advocate for both the Democrat and Republican parties. Who would you pick as their nominees for being their strongest, best nominees? You're an objective guy. You know how politics works. Of the names that are out there, like, don't pick like your grandma. You know what I mean? Of the people that are on the lists, who do you think are the quality of both sides?
So if I'm looking at the best matchups for the Democrats, I'm looking for somebody who can have a broader appeal and doesn't get caught in the same trap that we saw folks like Kamala Harris get caught in. I mean, Gavin Newsom's going to get caught. Yes, he's a little more eloquent than Kamala Harris, but he's going to get caught in the same traps that Kamala would. The good news for people like Gavin is he's going to go out of his way to make sure that he never has to set foot in a state like Iowa or New Hampshire where he actually has to talk to real voters. If you see the DNC start to shift the primary calendar away from New Hampshire and Iowa, you'll know that Gavin Newsom has his fingerprint on top of it. But I'd be looking for someone who could have a broader appeal, who can get into some of those populist discussions that Donald Trump has dominated and the Democrats have abandoned. And talking about people like an Andy Beshear or a Josh Shapiro. But I don't think they have much of a chance because I think the DNC will go out of their way to ensure that they don't have a chance to put their finger, to have their chance to put their, people like that up front.
But that's a separate question. I'm asking you who you think is the strongest candidate for the two. If they were going to put their best teams on the field, it would be who? Shapiro and Vance, Beshear and Rubio.
No, I think that Vance does continue to keep the legacy of some of the Trump populists. Keep that, but we've seen across the country that very few people have been able to activate and just basically get that group out consistently when their name is not Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump has a unique charisma and a unique ability to get those folks activated and energized. And every time someone else has attempted to replicate that, we've not seen the same level of success. So I think that just because J.D. Vance carries that legacy does not mean necessarily that he will be able to replicate what Donald Trump has been able to do. Obviously, Marco Rubio has obviously a following. He's been able to handle himself in a way to keep himself clean of a lot of the grenades and the flack that Donald Trump has tossed out there. So, and I mean, the memes of him having the willingness to take on any and every new job. Whatever you think about it's driving this message. This guy is a hard worker, willing to do anything, and that helps. But there's a lot of great governors out there. I don't need to tell Dave Carney about Greg Abbott, who I think is a fantastic leader and has done an outstanding job in the state of Texas, and frankly is a much better retail politician than Ron DeSantis. So I think that he's someone that we should be looking at and talking to, although Dave probably has a little bit better intel on that than I do. So I'll defer to him on that.
Well, look, I love the idea of Greg Abbott or Brian Kemp. They totally make sense, and neither of them will come even close to being the nominee, right, Dave Carney?
Right. I don't know why you're against Greg's grandmother. I think she would bring a whole new, fresh perspective to this fight.
My apologies. My apologies.
Yesterday, the left did a trial balloon on Graham Platner being the nominee in 28. I mean, that is how crazy. Yeah. No, it's all online. You should get it's internet. You got to buy it and look on
the interwebs. I got to get on that thing. Okay.
So and then I'm doing work with Susan Collins, and everyone's sort of, oh, this is crazy, blah blah blah, and I'm saying that's what they said about Illinois State Senator Obama, and what they said about Donald J. Trump. Oh, that's never going to happen. Blah blah blah. It is going to be somebody like that. I mean, we all those of us on the center right think AOC is a total joke, but that's very possible. Their strongest candidate would be Josh Shapiro. He has zero chance of winning the nomination, but if he somehow got the nomination, he would be their strongest candidate of the people.
I just want to interrupt. I just want to interrupt real quick because I want you to address something that Halperin said when I talked to him, which is he said, because I said with you, my lovely bride is a member of the tribe, and she says none of her fellow Jews are ever going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party in 2028. Pretty astute insights for someone who doesn't follow politics. Halperin says, look, every candidate has problems. And then if you look at the Democratic list, they all have a big problem. He says, once you get closer and you realize you've got to pick, you got to work with a flaw, he believes that Democratic primary voters will ignore the flaw of the issue of being Jewish for Shapiro, or if by some weird circumstance, Rahm Emanuel suddenly caught fire. Do you think is he right? Is that something the Democrats can choke down? Or do you agree with me that they have so obsessed on this Israel, Gaza, Palestine, Jewish issue, they can't get past? It would be like saying we're going to nominate the head of ICE to be the Democratic presidential nominee.
No, I think it is right now on fire. The hardcore left is on fire about Israel. So I think it's very hard to. Why is Josh Shapiro and Beshear, which is I don't think has a shot, but why are they competitive? Because they have Republican legislatures that don't let them do the crazy stuff that California and Illinois. There's a governor, a break on the crazy, and because of that, they have a better record. And Josh Shapiro can raise money. He comes from an important state, and he's articulate. And I think at some point somebody will figure out why Kamala Harris didn't pick him, because she would have been president. Thank God she didn't pick him. But he's competitive, but he has a huge problem. And if it's there, the anger. I mean, just watch these protests. On the news, they are angry. They don't know why they're angry. The greatest event was an example of that was last couple of weeks ago. There was a protest, and against the war in Iran, and one of the reporters asked, well, I think with Jesse Waters, correspondent, says, don't you think it's unfair that they don't talk about the gays of Hormuz, they only talk about the Straits of Hormuz? And this woman said, absolutely. Well, why do you think that is? Well, I don't think they like gays and blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is how stupid people are. The gays of Hormuz are ignored, and we only talk about the Straits of Hormuz. They don't care. They just hate, they think they hate Israel. They probably, have no clue what they're hating.
Sure.
But it is so powerful in their primary. It's, I would say it would be more likely that a pro-choice-ish Republican could win the nomination versus a pro-Israel Democrat right now.
That's interesting.
Now, could that change over the next year? Absolutely. But
Greg Moore, it's interesting
on our side, if Vance wants it, even if he's completely flawed and Trump, gas prices and we have a terrible political ending to Trump. He will have an opportunity. Whether it translates, in the primary, translates to general election, I don't know. Rubio, I would say, is so far, outperforming any expectations. And I think he would be the next, he would be the front. I don't think they'd run against each other unless things politically totally deteriorate, in the administration. But you never know.
Well, let's wrap up with this question. Of the candidates who are on the list, who's the most New Hampshire Democrat and Republican? In other words, if all you had to do was win New Hampshire to become president, who would be the best candidate, Greg Moore?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, you have to have someone who's willing to do the retail, right? Because in New Hampshire, you still have to do retail politics, and from the standpoint of a lot of these big state governors and senators, it really takes them out of the picture. I mean, no offense to Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is a classic example of a big state governor who didn't translate to a retail politician.
Sure.
So from that standpoint, having somebody who understands the small state dynamics so you're talking about someone who's been able to bridge that gap. I think a great example would be some of the folks who've run successful retail campaigns, and frankly, a lot of those names are not really emerging at this point. Some of the people on the Democratic side who've shown a willingness to do retail, like Ro Khanna, who's really come here and has actually done these small events. He's willing to toil in the vineyards. I think that's the type of candidate who would probably do well, and maybe he'll put his name on a ballot. We'll see.
Dave Carney, who's the most New Hampshire candidate on either side? Pro tip: it's not JD Vance.
I think that of the people that are the great list of mentioned people, the 18 or so people, I think Rubio, because of his experience here, would be able to best adapt it. The problem being, once you're Secretary of State and you travel with an entourage that fills up the 747, it becomes harder and harder. But he understands New Hampshire because he was here and he lost. And you always learn more from losing than winning.
Right.
So I think in terms of adapting, he would be probably the best of all the people that are mentioned. Sure. I think the Democrats, a congressperson generally, except in a really, 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 really safe district, are better at retail politics. And Roe has, the progressive chops, but I'm not sure that he would play well long term in New Hampshire. I would think that a guy like Beshear comes at a small state, and he's got to go talk to 30 people at the Lions Club in some town.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just got to interrupt. Why hasn't anyone said Buttigieg yet? It's so obvious that if Buttigieg runs, he's going to be the winner here in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I can't pronounce his name properly, so I don't mention him.
Pete, Mayor Pete.
He's just too phony, and
they're gonna love him. He's exactly the kind of phony baloney guy New Hampshire Democrats love.
Well, I know, but not the presidential primary voters. There's a difference between the activists and what they think and what primary voters think. And I just don't think. I think there'll be competition. There'll be plenty of other choices. I just don't see him. He's just so he wants it too bad. He wants it so bad that he'll do anything, including anything exact opposite of what he did last month. So I don't think so. You look at the people. When Kamala Harris had her first event in Portsmouth,
right,
when she ran for two weeks, she had 1,000 people at that church and 800 people in line. And to see all that and not be able to take advantage of that and run a real campaign is, she is, when they write the history books about her, I really want to read them because not these current stuff, which is all people.
Exactly.
But in the long-term history, it's going to be fascinating to see what her thinking process was.
Well, there's already been a really brutal book about her campaign. It's called 107 Days, written by Kamala Harris. And I read it twice, and I had to go to the hospital after 4 hours of it because I was, it was wow. I mean, just if you want to just,
pictures in it?
So it's more erotic from a political standpoint because just watching how clueless she is, and oh my God, it was just amazing. Look, it's going to be Don Jr. versus Kamala Harris. Write it down. That's it. That's where we are. I'm not allowed to have nice things, and so that's what we got to do. But I am allowed to talk to really smart people. Thank you so much, Dave Carney and Greg Moore, for joining us here on the New Hampshire Journal podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.